He begins verse 27 with a very important phrase. He says, only conduct yourselves. That's one word in the Greek language, and it's the main verb in this whole passage. And the word, it comes from a root word, which is translated city. It's the word polis, which in earlier times usually referred to the city-states to which the inhabitants gave their primary allegiance. And so when he says here, only conduct yourselves, he has certainly a sense of devotion and allegiance that he has in his mind. For example, James Montgomery Boyce writes, in our day it's possible for a person to live in a city and yet feel no attachment to it. And a person can be a citizen of a country without participating in its government or its public life. And this was not possible for a citizen of a Greek city or a Greek polis. The polis was his life. Its laws were part of his being. Its customs was something of which he was proud of. He knew all about it, and he knew practically all its inhabitants. It demanded from him a complete loyalty, and he gave it willingly. And to him it was the best thing in his life. So when you look at this word, he is trying to say to us, or it carries the meaning of being a citizen, but not just of being any kind of citizen, but to be a good citizen. To live, to behave, to conduct yourself, to conduct your life, to have the way of life be that of the gospel. The citizenship he has in mind here, it's not to Rome, it's not to Philippi, but it was to heaven. Because he says in chapter 3 and verse 20, we are citizens of heaven. In other words, he's saying, remember that you have a higher allegiance calling you to faithful conduct, and that allegiance is to the gospel of Christ. You are to behave as citizens of the gospel. Notice what else he says, only conduct yourself in a manner worthy. And the word worthy means of like value. Kenneth Weiss says the saints are to see to it that their manner of life weighs as much as the gospel they profess or believe, or their words will have no weight. That which gives weight to a Christian's words is the fact that his manner of life befits, is congruous to, or it corresponds with the gospel that he preaches. In other words, believers are to have integrity. They are to live consistently with what they believe, what they teach, what they preach. They are to conduct their lives in a manner appropriate to the gospel. There's a parallel passage over in Ephesians 4. If you just back up and hold your place where you're at in Philippians. And he says it another way here in Ephesians 4, 1 and 2. Notice what he says. He says, I, the prisoner of the Lord, implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, showing tolerance for one another in love, being diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. In other words, the kind of life that you and I are to live is a walk of humility, it's a walk of gentleness, it's a walk of long-suffering, it's a walk of love. And this here is what will keep the unity of the Spirit, is when we live in this manner. When he wrote to the Colossians, he said his prayer for them was that they would walk worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing Him, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God. So walking worthy is walking in a manner pleasing to the Lord. Now, as we look at the rest of verse 27 and carry it down to verse 30, I want you to see three ways in which we are to live this life. Three ways in which we need to be reminded of the bigger picture. Three ways in which we need to be reminded that there's some footing that we need to stand on. That there needs to be a firm foundation under our feet. We need to be reminded that, yes, there is an enemy out there, and that enemy hates you. That enemy hates this church. That enemy hates everything that this church stands for, or everything that we preach, or everything that we teach. He hates Jesus. He hates the gospel. And I'm not talking about any individual. I am talking about Satan. And we have to keep that in mind. And so what does Paul do to keep that bigger picture in mind? Look at what he says in the rest of verse 27. First, he focuses on your conduct. He says it has to be in ranks with or in harmony with the gospel. And then he says so that whether I come and see you or remain absent, I will hear of you that you are standing firm in one spirit. So the first thing he tells us is to stand firm. Listen, when any bad news comes, what's the thing that gets threatened is our foundation. In fact, you find out many times what kind of foundation that you have. Is it a foundation that can be ripped out from up under you? Is it kind of like the old clichéical thing that someone pulled the carpet out from under you? Or maybe you're standing on sand like at the beach when the water comes in and the sand all gathers around your feet. You don't have a firm foundation. That's why you don't have any houses built right there at the edge of the water. There's nothing there that's firm. But he says here, our conduct is to be in line with the gospel. Our conduct is to be aligned with the truth. In other words, he's saying, stand firm. Stand firm. What does that mean? What does it mean to stand firm? What's the first thing you think of when you think of standing firm? How about perseverance? How about digging in, if you will? How about holding your ground? How about being firm and persistent in your standing? Let me ask you this question. I know the answer is probably a no, but have you ever tried to force a horse or a donkey or any other animal to do something they don't want to do? Okay. As I was thinking about saying that, I figured I better throw in any other animal because I know that not everyone has. Some of the animals we have had or have. We used to have 2 donkeys, and you've heard stubborn as a mule. Oh, that's right on. And if they don't want to do something, just like any other animal, you'll literally drag them to get them to do it, right? Well, think of it in that way. Not stubborn against the gospel, not stubborn against holiness, not stubborn against God working in you and you're fighting against the things that He's doing in your life, but you are so firmly grounded that nothing can move you. Nothing can shake you from the truth. Nothing can shake you from the gospel. You know, frankly, I struggle just as you do. And I struggle maybe even at a different level than you do. Not to say I don't struggle, and not to say that I'm different than you. But as a pastor of a church, there are certain things that I deal with, and all pastors deal with that's a little different. And I would just certainly say that what I had to share with you a few moments ago and any other time that anybody else has left our church, I have struggled with that, just as some of you. But that struggle right there should not shake our foundation, should it? It shouldn't rattle us to such a point that we say, okay, I quit. He says here, stand firm, or be steadfast. Hold one's ground, regardless of opposition, regardless of danger, regardless of disappointment. See, the idea here is a term used of a soldier who is defending his position at all cost, even if it cost him his life. Let me put it another way. Let me use it allegorically or figuratively. It's referring to holding fast to your belief, holding fast to your conviction. What can sway you from your convictions? Can someone come up to you and share something with you that is an opposing viewpoint? Will that challenge you in what you believe? Or will that cause you to be moved from your conviction?